My name is Ivon Blackman, and for this first exam, I'll be making an easy, no-knead bread. First thing that we're going to do before we do anything, safety first, sanitation, we're going to wash our hands. Sanitation is very important. It's probably the most important aspect of preparing food. And you want to make sure you wash them really thoroughly. From here, we're going to start with our ingredients. The recipe calls for 3 cups of bread flour, 1.5 cups of water, a teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. And I got my ingredients out here. Got some dry yeast, got the salt, got the flour. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with our 3 cups of bread flour. And this bread flour is made up of whole wheat, and they're just processed down and made into flour. From here, we're going to add our teaspoon of salt. Salt is very important because for a few reasons. First, obviously, flavor. Everybody loves stuff with a little bit of salt in it. Or at least I do. But salt also is important for the chemistry of the dough as well. First, it strengthens the gluten in the dough, and that is important because we're going to need our dough to be able to absorb a lot of moisture and gas without those bonds, without it breaking down. We're going to need it to stretch and rise when we add our yeast. So it's very important for strengthening those bonds, allowing it to rise. Another reason it is important is it regulates the fermentation of our yeast. So that's why the salt is important. Too much salt and the yeast isn't able to get any of the sugars out that it needs to produce to ferment, and too little salt and the yeast ferments too much. So speaking of yeast, we're going to go ahead and add our yeast. 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. Yeast is very important. It's probably, I would say, the most important ingredient. It's going to allow that bread to rise and get airy, like how we want it to be. It's actually a living thing, so it has to be kept around 87 degrees Fahrenheit, or it'll die. So if it's too cold or if it's too hot, it'll die. So we need it around 87. It's around 85 in here right now, so that's pretty good. What the yeast does is it takes in sugars, like I said earlier, and it produces carbon dioxide gas and alcohol. The alcohol will be baked out of it when we put it in the oven. So I added my yeast and I added my salt. We're going to get that mixed up. The next thing we're going to add is our 1.5 cups of lukewarm water. Lukewarm water, it needs to be lukewarm because, like I said, if it's too hot or too cold, it could kill the yeast, and we need the yeast to be alive. And yeast also needs moisture, so it needs warmth and it needs moisture, so to do its job. So we're going to add that to the dough, to our flour and salt and yeast mixture, and it's going to make dough actually. So we're going to mix this up really good. And at first, like right now, it's going to be clumpy, but that'll change as we leave it to sit and ferment. But let's really get our muscles into it and stir it up the right way. Want to get clumpy. Like I said, it's not difficult at all. So from here, we're gonna cover this up We're going to cover this up with some plastic wrap, and we're going to let it sit for 12 to 20 hours. In this time, the yeast will be able to do its job. It's going to ferment, and this dough is going to rise. Like I said, we're going to leave it right here on the stove. Like I said, it's about 85 degrees in here, so that'll leave the yeast to be able to rise and do its job. From there, we're going to, like I said, so after about anywhere between 12 to 20 hours, we're going to put that dough, we're going to take it out, we're going to put it in a nice solid ball, and we're going to put it into a nice bread dish here. We're going to put it into a ball, and we're going to put it in the oven. 450 degrees, and we're going to bake it for about 30 minutes. Covered. From there, we're going to take it out, and we're going to uncover it, put it back in the oven for another 15 to 20 minutes. To know that it's done, there's two ways to know that it's done. First, you can test the temperature of it, and with that, it should be about 250 degrees Fahrenheit when you test it. Or you can tap it, and it should be a low, hollow sound, and that's how you know that it's ready. And you take it out the oven, and there you have it. You have this recipe makes a pound. You have a 1 pound loaf of no knead bread. That's about it. Thank you, and have a good one.